Hello, Studio 108 Seekers and Sages. I'm so glad you stopped by. I'm so glad you're following. I'm here today with Richard Gartner from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He is one of my favorite teachers for inquisition and exploration and new ideas, new ways of looking at things. His business name, kind of structure name, is Frameworks, which says a lot about his way of looking at yoga, looking at the body, looking at practice, and actually looking at life. So I find him to be a master at like putting things into structure and then helping me kind of weed apart and explore and discover through that. Hi, Richard.
Hi, thank you for having me on, Tracy, and I feel I'm in really good hands today.
I know, it's gonna be fun. I first met Richard at a yin immersion, and that was in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I drove out there by myself, stayed in a hotel. It's quite a little town. It's quite a little town, and then you walked into this yoga studio, and oh my gosh, the warmth and the love and the welcome and the familiarity, of just people gathering to practice. And one of the things I loved about you, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to make a list. Okay, I love that you infuse poetry, and I know we're gonna touch on that. I love that you had this framework concept that you were sharing about yin yoga, and I love that you really saw students. And I'll just share that the tip you gave was, I think maybe the third day of yin experience was like, most of you are already really flexible. What you need is some strengthening, not more yin, but you're here for the training. So Richard's like that kind of high integrity teacher that really looks at his students for their own best interest. And as a teacher, I find him an excellent teacher's teacher. So I'm super excited to talk to him today. I'm gonna zip it. Richard, tell me how you're doing.
Oh my gosh, well, yeah, we're doing well. I mean, Pittsburgh obviously is under cover of snow, like I'm sure a lot of places are. But yeah, I mean, aside from staying warm, I'm just doing a lot of planning. That was not the case in the past 2 years. It just feels really good to plan, and it feels really good to think of like long-term plans as opposed to just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next week? That's going to mess up my schedules. So really it's just like, I'm like getting back into what feels like a groove. And I didn't realize how much I missed that from the before times to think, oh, I'm going to do something. This is January now. Oh, I'm going to think of something to do in November, and maybe we'll do that. Like it just, that was just not going to be the case for a while. And I'm so happy to like start thinking in terms of like longer spaces of time.
100%. And I think like your idea of structure, like you're hitting that right on the head, is like for the last 2 years, we haven't been able to plan out. We haven't been able to consider what a bigger structure. It was all like really in the moment micromanaging because things were changing, things were shifting. The world was really unreliable. And now you've got this sense of hope, huh?
I think I do. Yeah. Things feel weirdly hopeful again.
Yeah, I love that. If you do, then it puts me in good company. I love that. So one of the blog entries that you offered this past, I don't know, a few months ago, when I reached out about doing a conversation today, was about your attention span. The loss of your attention span, the reclaiming of your attention span. It really spoke to me. And I would love to unpack that with you today and share some of that with folks.
Yeah, so I wrote that at the beginning of 2020. We had these big plans, and March 2020 just kind of changed all of that, stopped it kind of in its tracks. And so what I did from there was pivot to a weekly online series. So aside from my private clients, which that structure didn't really change. We just kind of met over video, but I couldn't be in person and I couldn't teach workshops. So I decided to do a subscription class, and it was 3 videos, a more dynamic video, active, a more settling, like relaxed video, a calming practice, and then a short practice. And so I pivoted to doing 3 of these videos a week, and so in terms of thinking over years, like over the course of a year, that kind of shrunk to like a 7-day turnaround time. right? So basically I'm publishing 1 week as I'm trying to edit the next week and record a third week.
Oh,
so everything was it was just very condensed and scattered, and it sort of had to be. I couldn't, there was a method to it, but I couldn't just focus on 3 things like 3 videos a week. It was really about scheduling the previous week and thinking about the next week and writing these weekly reflections. So my mind was just skipping all over the place. And
what you're really saying too is that you weren't just skipping topic to topic. It's almost like time hopping, when you have to like go back to what you did last week and work with that, which is past, and then make some anticipatory plans towards next week, which is in the future. It's like, it's really a scattered relationship.
It was very scattered. I felt scattered. I was getting it done. And like when I could focus on things, I was able to do really good work. So, and I am proud of the video series. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm so proud that I was able to do that. But the issue was then at the end of it, and I thought I would just do it for 4 to 6 weeks. Kind of everyone thought we'd be done over that period of time.
Remember how foolish, remember how naive and silly we were?
I know, it was like so quaint.
We're cute. Yeah, we're cute.
Yeah, it was like so quaint, and I was like, okay, well, we're like kind of sheltering for a few weeks. I'll do this thing for 4 to 6 weeks. And so I did 37 weeks that year. And then starting in 2021, because I was just like so scattered all over the place, I did a 12-week series and pieced together so I could just think over the period of 3 months and not have to think really just kind of day to day, and sometimes even like task to task. Like moment to moment.
Well, professionally, I will say that video series has to be a really fabulous product. So perhaps when we come to the end, maybe there's somewhere that you have that housed that I would love to access that, and maybe.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can totally share YouTube links. They are YouTube link accessible.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. All right, so we'll share that with folks, but please continue, because I'm hearing where you're going with this attention span idea.
Yeah, and so like I'm not used to doing that, so it was sort of like really like much a mental pivot for me. And then I realized after a couple months, so I would be working on planning one set of videos. I had just recorded another week, and I had just released the third week. So then people would come and so I would get replies. Some feedback from people, and also some questions like, oh, hey, you did this in the video. And I had just recorded that like last week, and I completely forgot about it. Like my brain was not able to retain information anymore. And for me, that was like a bad sign, because usually I'm good. I mean, this is my profession. When I'm teaching something, I should know how to speak about it. But everything was just happening so quickly that I was just done. And I realized that I was trying to multitask, and not trying, I was sort of doing, like, as I was teaching clients, videos were downloading. As I was like sleeping overnight, videos were being rendered. So in a sense, there was never a time where I wasn't working. Like any kind of like, any time that my computer or my phone or the internet wasn't doing something was like downtime. Like time that could be spent. So so between that and kind of juggling 9 different sequences and themes in my head, I realized I was just multitasking, and that's so tiring. That's the first thing about multitasking. It's tiring. It's the opposite of flow, and flow is a pretty specific term. There's a book called On Flow by Csikszentmihalyi is his name. And so flow is like, everyone experiences it when you're doing one task for a while and you get so into it. It's amazing. You just kind of forget where time went. And I was realizing I was not doing that, because I was just going from task to task to task. Flow is very invigorating. Multitasking is very tiring. So that was one aspect of the multitask. Yeah.
There's that yoga sutra about meditation, and the oil pouring and that singular attention. You know what that one?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure where that's from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where it's from, but yeah, like you want meditation to be like the quiet, smooth pouring of oil and not this scattered spray of water, essentially, you know?
Right. So I'm getting that visual while you talk about that, about flow. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I was just kind of spraying my efforts everywhere. And so that's one aspect of multitasking is it just tires you. The second one is it slows you down. And so studies have been done for people who do the same task repeatedly and then do a second task repeatedly versus doing one, the other, one, the other, one, the other. The ones that have to go back and forth like that, it just slows you down. And if you feel like things are taking longer than they should, that just makes you more anxious. So it's almost this like downward spiral from like, I'm not getting enough done to try to do too many things at once, which just leads to more anxiety. The third aspect, of course, is multitasking is distracting. And so I just found over the course of that like 53 weeks of video making, I was just in a distracted state. That was like my new normal. And of course, just being constantly distracted leads to impaired cognitive ability. For example, like multitasking in the developing brain, like up to including age 25, studies have said that will actually like permanently lead to like permanent slight cognitive impairment for someone whose brain is trying to develop and make executive function connections.
Wow. So you think about, well, you can think about a lot of things, but my first thought was grad school, medical students, like we require multitasking of our youth and student, situations. Wow, all the way up to age 25. And I have to tell you, when you are speaking about this, I'm taking it personally. So guilty. So,
but here, that that's the thing is, I was just like I go by the mediocrity principle. Like by the end of that year, I was like, I cannot be the only one that feels like this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you felt like that. I'm sure that anyone who this goes back to just kind of being sheltered in place one time and like working from home. People were going to school from home. People are now raising their kids at home. When you go to work, when you go to a yoga studio, like those are different places. You can't be raising your kids or doing laundry in a yoga studio. Like you just have to practice yoga. Yeah. But when you're at home and that home is so many things at once, the ability to multitask is just sitting right there in front of you. And if you're like, I need to get my stuff done.
Yeah, it's almost a requirement. It's like almost a requirement. I mean, and you're either going to it just takes so much strength to hold your practice in the center of all that whirlwind. Have you seen that Verbo commercial about this is your yoga shala, meditation room, office, classroom, dining hall, and it's going through the house saying that exact same thing. Like what we really need is a vacation spot. What we really need is school to be school and studio to be studio and home to be home. And like, it's very difficult when all that compiles.
Yeah. And I mean, my wife, Chris, and I are fortunate to live in a home big enough that we could kind of set aside rooms or parts of rooms to be that certain thing where we can then do our work. But it was still home. Like because I wasn't going anywhere, because we struck our living room, we pushed all the chairs and the tables to the side. And that was also the yoga studio now, right? And so it just created this opportunity to just constantly switch from task to task to task, just to try to get everything done that we as householders, caretakers have all been like asked to do.
100%. Yeah.
So after I did my 12-week series, which it was nice to focus on something 12 weeks long, and so that ended in March of 2021. It ended almost a year later. So then I was just like, okay, I'm done. I can now just relax and get back to the things that I loved at the beginning of March 2020 and just realized I couldn't do it. And that included like sitting still for meditation. That included reading books, like full length books, or even just watching like a movie. Like I love weird art house movies. And like, I tried to sit with them and I was like, I can't do this. What's going on? So my natural inclination was to work on my meditation practice, and just sitting down wasn't the answer either. It just wasn't working for me. So what I decided to do was just let my brain wander for a while. And so I had sort of like this like wandering aspect of my brain. There's a concept of meditation. Shamatha is the Sanskrit name, and if you are almost calm or if you're almost settled, you can sit down, and shamatha feels like the rest of you settling.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what I was used to until March 2020. After my video series, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like I was somewhat settled and I could settle. I sat down and it felt like a whirlwind, and shamatha was just it was just like, instead of a category 3 hurricane, it was a category 2 hurricane.
Still a hurricane.
So I lost that executive function over the course of the year. And I was like, so the meditation wasn't the answer. And I was like, well, tell you what, my brain wants to wander. Like, let's just let it wander for a while. And so that's when I came up with this blog post on like ways to counter this sort of like multitask executive function fatigue. Was like, well, so what can I embrace rather than what can I let settle? Let's just let it. Let's just let the brain do what it wants to do and give the brain space. Like, my brain needed space first before it could settle. And so that's where the wandering came in.
Richard, do you think a little bit of a contributing factor is just like the trauma of it all? Like, it was a trauma.
I think that's part of the hurricane. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were many lives lost. I have one client I hadn't heard from in a while. They contacted me like 3 months after, and they were in the ICU for 6 weeks.
Wow. Yeah.
So like,
I think just the shock, the being in fear, the uncertainty. Like, I don't want to overuse, like there can be an overuse of the PTSD letters like that, but there's an element of trauma that came through the whole society. And I don't know if any one of us could actually be immune. Like, we always think, oh, well, I knew, or, that doesn't affect me. Like, there's like, what you're describing is a little like low grade trauma response even.
I do think, we thought some things were pretty permanent, and it turns out they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that is always like that's kind of the whole point of meditation.
Yeah.
Or as not point of meditation, but one aspect of meditation is to kind of look into your own impermanence. And
Yeah.
I think, for a long time that was very abstract for me. Once I finally like got that notion of impermanence, it was a bit frightening.
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of happened collectively, all across the world.
Yeah.
So you can't sit and focus on settling when there's so much else that's unsettled.
Yeah.
At least I can. I'm sure like a really good meditation practitioner can just kind of sit in the whirlwind and be like, okay, here's the whirlwind. I just had a hard time.
The people that are that high level are serving the collective too. And so my guess is that even for people that were high level skilled practitioners, were called upon to use stronger skill sets during such a global upset. I mean, when people said it was a root chakra safety crisis, that's legitimate. And some people had better skills to deal with it. And the people that really were skilled could be leaders for the collective and anchoring the whole. So, I mean, there's a lot that really, might be beyond our awareness about it. But I love what you're talking about and how you're describing your experience, because it's very relatable to me. And my guess is it's very relatable to a lot of people. So I know in your article, you kind of bulleted out a few ideas on how you worked with this experience. I'd love to hear about those.
Yeah. So, so much about a meditation practice when you're almost settled
Uh-huh.
is about letting go, right? So like when a thought comes up, you just let it go, right? So that's like the concept of like non-clinging. I decided to tack in the opposite direction and say, well, what can I embrace at this point? So instead of embracing, for example, like my art house movies and the novels that I wanted to read, I just embraced small, short works of art. And I mean, particularly calming for me was haiku, which I was, I've been a fan of. I mean, for a long time. I have a lot of haiku there, but that was like my primary ingestion of art, was like poetry, and because it's short, you can ruminate on it for as much or as little as you want. And I mean, if you're reading just like a haiku, it's 17 syllables. Like if you're just like, I need art, you can just read it and be like, okay, and just have like 10 seconds with that piece of art.
And it's visceral when you read that. Like it's visceral. You can feel the impact of the imagery and the words and the concepts. You can feel that. So it's an embodiment practice, which is helpful to the nervous system.
Yeah, I mean, like the best poets can really get that into a condensed area. And of course, like novels can do the same thing, but you're reading for hours to get into the world. Poetry in particular just brings it down to this really sharp relief and just lets you see the essence. And so, and yeah, I am now, but I was not in the mood, I guess, for like long form pieces of art. And I just decided to tack and embrace these short pieces. And that's how I got back to appreciating the things that I had always appreciated, which art is really important to me. And it's, music, visual art, poetry, theater, all that stuff is really important to me. I just had to start small.
Yeah, so if it's not art for you, if you're listening and you're thinking, yeah, Richard and his haiku, who cares? It's not my thing. What is your thing? Like one short snippet, like bringing it down to a more bite-sized piece of whatever it is that is your thing that brings you into a place of joy. Great advice.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I found helpful for myself. The other thing I decided to embrace was discomfort. Because I felt that I was just kind of uncomfortable the whole time, right? And I'm lucky enough to be able-bodied and to just not deal with any chronic issues. So again, it was sort of like new to me to feel just like I'm just uncomfortable with everything. I'm tired. Like I was just chronically tired, and I just decided to embrace that. And so for me, like the stabilizing work of stronger yoga poses, I was like, that's not for me quite right now. So I went to high intensity interval training.
Love that.
So rather than hold half moon pose for 3 minutes or do, a 10-minute headstand with like the variations, I was like, let's just move as fast as I possibly can. And it's over in 60 seconds. So this is once again about just condensing the time and making me appreciate my body in a way that I don't have to, and like right now I'm back into like long form practices again. And I'm still doing my HIIT stuff too, actually. I like incorporated that.
You liked it, yeah.
Yeah, I like it. But that was like my go-to of like, well, I have this nervous energy. I usually get that out. Well, in the before times, it'd be long holds, ringing out, inversions, restorative postures. And once again, I was just not in that place. So let's just focus on like a HIIT practice, which I had and I go to his classes too, but I had a trainer design HIIT practices for me that I could do in my home.
Mhm.
And I just got an online timer, and like it would just be like like they're all like as rapidly as possible for like 1 minute. And
Yeah.
I was like, I could do that. I could focus on a thing and really just gun it for 1 minute, and then take a break, and then do another one for a minute. And it's not this 90-minute gradual unfolding of my
And you're
experience.
kind of massaging yourself into the discomfort place and using that discomfort to bring yourself back into organization and structure.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. I mean, like HIIT is meant, I mean, the science is like, you know, HIIT doesn't take long to make all the benefits, but you have to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I was
And
like,
I'm thinking, if you're
this is the
listening
benefit
here
of
and you're not in Pittsburgh, you don't know Richard's trainer, Leah's got some cardio sculpt classes with some HIIT work, and she's also a personal trainer. So if you want someone specifically to create something for you for your home work, she'd be really happy to make some videos for you and some things you could do at home. So yeah, onward, Richard. I love it. I love it. This is a good list. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, plus it was also just fun dealing with a different modality, you know? You know, like the yoga as asana or vinyasa, like those are good. I love those, but that's not all that we can do, right? So there's other means of like body expression. So like I shorten I shorten my consumption of art, like me enjoying other people's expression. I was able to consolidate my own expression of my physicality. I was able to shorten that, start small, and then grow bigger.
Yeah, and you're looking for the potency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
So and then the third thing that I decided to embrace was the executive function days, which I have high executive function days and low executive function days. Everyone has that. Multitasking really disrupts the brain regions, especially prefrontal cortex, that is in charge of executive functions, which is decision making and task making. And what I wrote about in my blog, I can bring it up. I'm not going to go through the whole list.
I loved it. I thought this concept was really outstanding.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So on like a high executive function day, you wake up, and if you want coffee, your task is to make coffee, right? That's the task. But on a low executive function day, that becomes like task after task after task, which includes grinding the beans, filling the water thing, put the water thing on, wait till it boils, pour the beans into, I have a French press, pour the water in, plunge it, like wait 3 minutes, continue the plunge, and then that's your coffee making, right? So it's not just, you know, and like we don't have to, it's not that we're dumb, it's just every step of that feels like an additional effort to me.
100%. And I know that I get, my husband tells me like, you're getting overwhelmed, because he sees when that kind of low grade vibration of irritation comes. And like, he can see in my executive functioning when it's effort to create every task. And the fact that there are 17 steps to whatever you're making coffee is in the moment, like, is causing me stress, versus on another day when I'm not overwhelmed and my nervous system is well organized, I'm just boom. And there's that flow again, like everything just kind of pours like the oil and you've got it.
Yeah. And that's another type of fatigue that we kind of inherited with the pandemic, was decision fatigue. Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't just like, oh, stop over at a friend's house. You know, you couldn't just do these simple things. This is what, like, we thought everything was permanent. Now everything's impermanent. And not only do things feel impermanent, but every decision we make, we have to like go through the steps more. Right. And so there's just so many more decisions into one decision. That's like a decision fatigue. That's sort of like executive function work.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
And like some days I'm just like, get up, you know, like I'm teaching clients, that's one thing. Sometimes it's like, teach the first client, do this, teach the second client, do that. You know, and like, I just decided I'm just going to embrace it. If I have 2 things to do today, or if I have 32 things to do today, those are the same things. I'm getting the same things done. But just to accept that, like, hey, every little thing is going to be a decision for me today.
Yeah, I've learned too not to sweat the list so much, because I feel like on some days 32 things can get done. And on other days, my list has 32 things, but only 6 can get done. And then somehow that needs to just be okay. I call it capacity, like, okay, that's capacity for today. That's all I've got,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. And like we all have, there's like a lot of talk in the wellness community about like limitless potential. But I don't agree. I don't agree. Like in any one given day, like in any one given day or in any one given year, a human being can only do so much. So like to just like everyone has their capacity, right? And to like ignore that capacity is basically like just trying to run headfirst into a brick wall, right? So so for me, it's like I appreciate my limits. And part of that appreciation of my limits is like, hey, if I'm having a low executive function day, it's going to be harder. I might not get as much done, and that's fine. I didn't want that to contribute to an anxiety about not getting the things I need to get done.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what you're talking about at the root of this is self-compassion, which is one of the most mature practices of yoga.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is just speaking for myself, but it's an ongoing process, right? You can have sort of like a high compassion day and a low compassion, self-compassion day.
Absolutely. But like being able to say, like, I'm okay with me on a high executive function day, and I'm okay with me on a low executive function day, that, that's your yoga practice without even rolling out the mat, like, coming into that place of self-compassion and relationship with yourself.
Yeah, and that self-relation is about like really identifying what works for you and what doesn't work. So that I wrote the blog post because I was like, man, like the things that worked are not working anymore, and I didn't just want to butt my head up against everything that I did prior. I just needed to find a way around it, and hopefully this talk, other people can also kind of identify, hey, I'm this way, but rather than adding anxiety to it, just embrace that aspect of yourself and learn to work with it. And that will turn the hurricane into that settling practice, right? Like instead of being a smaller hurricane, you might actually get to the point where like, hey, I can accept all of these things. I'm working on them. And now at this point, I do feel settled and I don't really have the low executive function days.
Yeah,
anymore.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, tell me about the 4th point. I think it's take your time, or was that just like the advice in culminating the article, the blog?
Yeah, so like the take your time was about having everything be a process, right? Shamatha is a process. Once you identify who you are and what you would like to work with, like the various aspects of yourself, like all of those take time. Also more specifically, I found that while I was not able to focus on things, I would just instead of multitasking, I would just do things in batches.
Okay.
So like I wouldn't like clean, like at this point I would like teach a day's worth of clients and maybe take a whole hour to like clean the house and do all like the home things and then enjoy a movie solidly. Instead of multitasking, I would cut those things up a little bit. So I would like watch a movie for 20 minutes, clean for 20 minutes, do yoga for 20 minutes, and just like rotate those because I had not developed my dhyana, my concentration back.
Right.
So,
well, I know
that's the aspect of take your time.
Yeah, prior to starting the recording, you and I were talking about like multitasking not really being scientifically possible. Like we don't do 2 things at the same time. It's like very quick attention splitting. So I think that what you're doing is you're like, okay, let me be the boss of, let me be the manager of, let me be the mindfulness manager of this attention splitting. So I've got a chunk that's only this, and then a chunk that is only that. And you might rotate through it, but at least you're really mindful and singular in each moment rather than this really quick, exhausting bouncing.
Right. Yeah. If you could extend it to 10 minutes or 20 minutes, for me, I had the potential to get more into that flow state.
Excellent.
Right. Like I was doing yoga. I was like, I can do it for 20 minutes. Let me just get into it rather than I'm just waiting for the next thing. Right. Like, like I was just always somewhere else for a while.
Yeah. Or
It just,
I get
it
like
didn't matter.
I get very response or reactive. Like I'm just always reacting to the next immediate thing rather than, giving attention to what's right there. Okay, so speaking of yoga, we're kind of coming to a point of time, but I want to give you an opportunity to just end with any tips you have for people in their home practice. Like we talked a lot about how to manage time to encapsulate it. We talked a little bit about environment, but do you have anything for people who are practicing at home that you think would be helpful in terms of this capacity to be in their practice?
Sure. Yeah. So in order to just, I think a lot of the battle is just getting to the mat. Right. So, and this I wrote with my as like tips for my high executive function, but I'll start out with my HIIT classes that I'm currently going to. They're at 6 a.m. and which is right. I know, right? Never thought I would be one of those people, but here I am. So, I'm 44. I need to do extra warm-ups before I go. So I'm like, well, in order to do that, I need to wake up like a couple minutes before 5. So my alarm set for 4:55. So what do? I wake up, I come down, the coffee is already ready to go. All I have to do is turn that on. My bag is packed with the water in it. My clothing is out already, like the workout clothing. And I am just going like there, it's all done for me by the person I was last night.
Who intended really to go.
Right. Like I'm like, look, like I need to because if I have to do so many of those things in the morning, I'm not going to get done. And it's also, there's a little bit of, there's this human bias called the sunk cost fallacy, but you can actually hack it and use it to your benefit. If I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, the bed feels so good, but I'm like, but I fixed the coffee already. My gym bag's ready. The noon tab is in the water. Like it's all my stuff is laid out. Like if I don't go, I just wasted all that time that I spent prepping for this. And so that can get me up. But it's also just easier to go, come down, get my coffee, and then do my 20, 25 minutes of yoga, and then just put my clothing on and go. If you've set the intention by physically setting up your space. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really good piece of advice for if you're going to do yoga in the morning, let's just say, before the house gets crazy, especially if people have kids or but have your mat set up before you go to sleep. Have whatever you're going to need right there. Mm-hmm. And you just wake up and you can just get into the flow before you even get onto the mat.
I love that. And I think it really points to one of the things I feel strongly about is that there's a dedicated space for my practice. But if I leave my mat out all the time, I stop looking at it and start just walking over it. So no matter what time of day I'm going to practice, if it's in the evening, then before I get started with my thing, I lay out my mat and say, okay, at 5 o'clock, you're going to be here. But when I'm done with my practice, I roll it up again. So it doesn't get, I don't get too numb to it. Like it doesn't get to be assumed, oh, there's that mat I'm walking across. It doesn't matter. It's like there's something about keeping your promise to yourself that you have to stay super fresh with, I find. But I would say, even if you're practicing in the evening, to do some preparatory things so that it's laid out and you're like, okay, but I made that promise to myself. I made that, I intended that this morning. I'm going to see it through. There's energy behind that. There's some inertia there.
Yeah, and that's a great point about putting the mat away. I am fortunate enough to have like a dedicated yoga space here in my home, because this is where I teach clients, and I have clients over here as well. But yeah, like if it's out all the time, you're gonna forget it. That's like a really good point.
Richard, are you at Schoolhouse anymore?
I mean, so I am teaching their teacher trainings. Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
I have not taught a class there, just because of the whole, like, I just don't know what to expect from the world and from variance and things. So yeah, I have stayed away from that.
Okay, so Schoolhouse Yoga is the studio that I had traveled to Pittsburgh to work with Richard after the yin training. So he had been at Schoolhouse Yoga. So you're going to do a 200 or a 300 at Schoolhouse?
So I'm actually doing 2 300 hours. One is at Sangha Center in Beaver, Pennsylvania, and the other is at a place, Yoga Centric, in Bel Air, Maryland. So yeah, those are going to run starting July.
Okay. So if you're interested in a 200 level TT, Richard's got 2 outstanding programs. You will learn a lot about frameworks, about systems, about patterns, and you will learn about the body and the fascial material and the meridians, and like so much more, all about shamatha and many more things. He's a very intelligent teacher, so he's someone whose programs I would wholeheartedly recommend for sure. And then come back and see if I need teachers. So if you're local and you're traveling to Bel Air, Maryland, or Beaver, PA, so those are going to be coming this July. I'm going to put the link to your website below so that folks can find you for those. You've got an open house when?
Yeah. My open house for the Beaver is coming up February 13th.
Oh, really?
Bel Air open house is the weekend of the 27th, February 27th.
Okay, so if you're listening and you're in those areas, or Richard does a lot online, so if you reach out, if you message him, he might be able to stream you in or talk to you, personally about the details of those programs, because it's a nice opportunity. What else do you? Oh, you're coming here! Yay!
I am.
There won't be any snow. So Richard will be here on May 7th, yoga teachers. He'll be presenting to the teacher tribe and all guest members, or all guests, participants. We're going to do, I just tagged it, I wrote it down, managing and mastering your online studio. So he has a lot of really great information. We didn't mention Kristen, the lovely wife, Kristen, and you guys are IT savvy. So Richard has a lot of great information, and he's going to talk to us about our skills for online teaching and how we can get ourselves feeling more comfortable using live streaming methods for interacting with our students, because so much has changed in the world and some of it is really good. And one of the really great things is that we have a greater comfort level and a greater accessibility, I guess, to online opportunities. So we want our clients, our students, we want all yogis to have access to that. So that's May 7th. Awesome. Did we get it all?
Great.
I think we did. I know. I'm so glad to be here with you today, Richard. Thank you so much for taking time. I know you wanted to drive, but this is just a perfect way to warm up the day for all of us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on, Tracy. Wonderful to see your face. And I will see you. It'd be great to see you in 3D coming May.
I know, right? In person. Okay, namaste to you and Kristen. Namaste to the seekers and sages and all people listening. Thank you so much for following. Like, comment, share, do the things so that we keep doing what we do, and so that the conversations here are really rich and impactful for all of us. Many blessings. Remember who you are.